There's something about stillness that modern life tries to erase. We've been taught that prayer must be loud, expressive, full of motion, that the hands must rise, the knees must bend, and the eyes must close in ritual precision. But there's another kind of prayer, one that doesn't rise, doesn't move, doesn't shout. It breathes, it listens, it lies down. I discovered it in a season when my mind was loud, but my heart was weary. I was running, not physically, but spiritually, chasing answers, chasing peace, chasing a version of prayer that fit the mold of every church I'd known. And yet, the more I prayed standing or kneeling, the less I heard. The words felt rehearsed. The silence after them felt empty. But one night, I was too tired to kneel. I just lay there on my back, staring at the ceiling, my Bible resting on my chest. I didn't speak a word. I didn't try to impress heaven with long sentences. I simply let my soul breathe. And in that stillness, I felt something shift, like the room itself had slowed and my heart could finally catch up with God's rhythm. Lying down, you surrender every pretense. You're not performing anymore. You're not posing before anyone, not even before your own idea of who you should be before God. You're just there the way Adam was when God breathed life into him, the way Jacob was when he dreamed of a ladder touching heaven, the way Jesus himself was when he rested, body still, trusting the Father completely. It's in that posture that the soul finally admits, I have no strength of my own. And maybe that's the secret, because lying down isn't laziness. It's surrender. It's the language of trust. When you lie down to pray, you're saying, God, I'm not the one holding this world together. You are. The modern believer sometimes forgets that prayer isn't about control. It's about communion. It's not a formula for miracles. It's a posture of humility, and nothing humbles the body like rest. When you're lying there, your heart is exposed, your breath slows, and there's nowhere to hide your thoughts. That's where God meets you, not in your performance, but in your honesty. I began to realize that lying down to pray wasn't a sign of defeat. It was an act of faith, because the body speaks what the soul believes. And in that horizontal silence, the Spirit begins to whisper things too deep for words, things the upright mind might miss because it's too busy standing tall. Every time I'd close my eyes, I'd feel as if I were floating, not upward, but inward, to the quiet space where my fears met God's patience. There, in that vulnerable stillness, I could finally hear him say, be still and know that I am God. Most Christians don't know that the ancient world saw lying down as sacred space. David spoke of meditating upon his bed, communing with God through the night. The Psalms are full of it. That moment between exhaustion and trust, where faith breathes without noise, and yet somehow we forgot. We made prayer about positions and power, about the right words and the right tone. But when you lie down, all that melts away. You remember what you truly are, dust and breath, both held by grace. That night, I didn't ask for anything. I didn't beg or demand. I simply whispered, Lord, I'm here. And that was enough. Because prayer isn't always a transaction. Sometimes it's just presence. And when you're lying down, presence feels closer. The weight of your body reminds you that you were made from earth. And the rise of your chest reminds you that God's breath is still in you. You are the meeting point between heaven and dust. And in that still posture, heaven leans close to listen. There's a strange beauty in realizing how the body and the soul speak the same language. We like to think prayer lives only in the mouth, in the words we say, the tone we use, the eloquence of our appeal. But prayer is far more ancient than language. It's written in the body itself, the way you breathe, the way you rest, the way you surrender your weight to the ground and say, I trust you enough to stop trying. When I first began praying lying down, I noticed something I hadn't felt before. My chest would rise, fall, and rise again. And with every breath, I could sense a rhythm older than thought. It felt like creation itself was breathing through me. The same Spirit that hovered over the waters now hovered over my quiet body. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was sacred simplicity. And I realized something profound, that this position wasn't new. It was ancient. It was woven into the stories of Scripture that we read so casually. Think of Jacob lying down in the wilderness with a stone for a pillow. The heavens opened to him not while he stood in worship, not while he shouted prayers, but while he lay down, helpless, unguarded, dreaming. Heaven chose that posture to reveal its staircase. Or consider David whispering to God on his bed through sleepless nights. He didn't need a temple. His bed became an altar. His weariness became worship. Even Jesus, when he lay asleep in the storm-tossed boat, taught a lesson more powerful than words. That rest in God is the ultimate form of faith. Because only someone fully surrendered can sleep through chaos, knowing heaven hasn't lost control. Lying down to pray is a quiet declaration of that same faith. It's saying, I don't have to stand to prove my strength. I don't have to kneel to prove my humility. I can just be, and you will still hear me. That's the heart of grace. That God listens, not because of our posture, but because of his presence. And yet the posture matters because it shapes the heart. When you lie down, the body naturally releases tension. The muscles let go of what the mind has been holding all day. It's almost as if the soul finally exhales. You realize how heavy the armor of constant striving has become. You realize that you've been trying to carry a world that was never yours to carry. In that surrender, something sacred happens. Your prayers stop sounding like speeches and start sounding like sighs. You stop instructing God and start inviting him. You stop talking at heaven and start breathing with it. Some of my deepest moments of clarity didn't come from sermons or study. They came from silence, lying there, eyes closed, letting the Spirit interpret the unspoken. Scripture says the Spirit intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. And when you're lying down, you can almost feel that translation happening in real time. Your body doesn't resist. Your heart doesn't hide. You are open. And in that openness, God begins to speak. This practice began to change how I approached prayer entirely. It made me realize that prayer isn't a performance of piety. It's the practice of presence. And presence doesn't demand posture. It demands honesty. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is stop performing, stop pretending. Just lie down and let your soul breathe. When you do that, you'll notice time slows down. The ticking clock of anxiety softens, the chaos outside fades. You become aware of smaller miracles. The sound of your own heartbeat, the faint hum of the air, the rhythm of your breath. Every one of them is a sermon reminding you God is near. You don't have to climb to reach him. You only have to rest to remember him. That's the mystery most Christians overlook. That lying down isn't a sign of distance from God. It's the place where he often meets those too tired to stand. Because grace doesn't wait for your strength. It meets you in your surrender. And when you finally learn to pray that way, flat on your back, hands open, no agenda, no noise, you begin to hear heaven differently. The silence becomes a teacher. The stillness becomes a sanctuary. And your own body, once restless, becomes a vessel of peace. There's something sacred about the way lying down mirrors the mystery of death, and through it, the mystery of resurrection. It's no accident that the same posture in which we sleep is the one in which the body rests in the grave. God designed even our rest to remind us of eternity. Every night we lie down, we practice surrender. We give up control. We fall into the unknown, trusting that we will rise again when morning comes. That's what prayer lying down began to feel like for me. A small resurrection rehearsal. When you close your eyes and stretch your body across the still earth, you are telling heaven, even if I never wake from this place, I'm at peace with your will. That kind of faith terrifies the flesh because it's not a prayer of asking, it's a prayer of yielding. It's not about what you want from God, but what you are willing to give to him, even your rest. The ancients understood this. In the Psalms, David said, I lie down and sleep, I wake again because the Lord sustains me. He wasn't just talking about bedtime. He was confessing resurrection trust, that every morning is proof of God's faithfulness, and every night of sleep is a miniature surrender to his power. When you pray lying down, you're stepping into that same rhythm. You're living like someone who believes that rest is not wasted time. It's holy time. I began to see my bed differently. It wasn't a place of retreat anymore. It was an altar of trust. Because when you lie down in prayer, you're stripped of all illusion of control. You can't gesture. You can't pace. You can't show strength. All you can do is rest in the unseen arms of the one who holds the world together. And in that stillness, the ego dies, quietly, peacefully, making room for the spirit to breathe again. The world glorifies movement, the rush, the climb, the endless noise of achievement. But heaven often moves in stillness. When Jesus healed Jairus' daughter, he told the crowd, she's not dead, she's asleep. He blurred the line between the two, as if to say that those who belong to God never really die. They just rest until he calls their name again. And when you lie down to pray, you're practicing that same faith. You're saying, even if I sleep in the valley of shadows, I will rise in your light. I think that's why lying down opens a deeper dimension of prayer, because the closer you come to the posture of death, the more clearly you begin to understand life. It's in that stillness that you realize how fragile and sacred your breath truly is. You begin to feel gratitude for every inhale, every heartbeat, the quiet miracles that sustain you while the world spins without noticing. And gratitude is where real prayer begins. When I lay there, I would think of the countless times God let me rest when I didn't deserve it. Times he carried me when I thought I was done. Times I was flat on the ground, not in peace, but in defeat. And yet, somehow, he turned that collapse into communion. That's when I understood, even the posture of failure can become a posture of faith if you let him meet you there. Because grace doesn't require strength. It requires surrender. And maybe that's why God sometimes allows exhaustion, so that we finally lie down and listen. Every breath you take in that posture becomes a confession. Every exhale says, you are God and I am not. Every heartbeat says, I still trust you. And in those small, silent affirmations, heaven writes back, I am here. When you rise from such prayer, you feel different. The peace doesn't shout, it lingers. It wraps around your day like a quiet assurance. You start noticing beauty again, the way light spills across the floor, the sound of wind through trees, the laughter of someone you love. You see the world the way God must see it, fleeting, fragile, but worth every breath. That's what praying lying down does. It restores your awareness of the sacred. It turns your rest into reverence. It transforms even your weakness into worship. And suddenly, the act of lying down, something so ordinary, so human, becomes a holy ritual, a reminder that death isn't the end and rest isn't defeat. It's just the pause between creation and resurrection. We live in a restless world, a world where prayer is often loud, hurried, performed for an audience, a world that believes motion means meaning. But the older I get, the more I realize God often waits for the moments when we stop moving, because that's when he can finally move in us. When you lie down to pray, you're rebelling against a culture that glorifies exhaustion. You're choosing to rest in a world addicted to proving. You're saying, my worth isn't measured by what I produce. My value isn't earned through busyness. I am enough because I am his. That's not laziness. That's spiritual maturity, because trust is harder than toil. Stillness is braver than striving. There's a revival waiting in rest, but it's a quiet one. It doesn't begin in stadiums or on stages. It begins in bedrooms, in the quiet spaces where a believer finally stops trying to impress God and starts letting God impress himself upon the heart. It begins when we realize that prayer isn't a way to reach God. It's a way to remember that he's already here. Lying down to pray reminds you of that. It strips everything away, the noise, the effort, the performance, until all that remains is the raw truth of your dependence. And that's where intimacy grows. Because God doesn't require your eloquence. He requires your honesty. I think about Jesus often, how in his final moments he lay down, the Son of God stretched upon the cross, finally surrendering everything back to the Father. Even his death was an act of trust, and when the stone rolled over the tomb, it looked like the end, yet it was just the deepest rest before the greatest awakening. Every time we lie down in prayer, we mirror that mystery. Death to self, rest in trust, and resurrection in peace. And perhaps that's what our generation has forgotten, that peace isn't found in noise, it's found in stillness. That prayer isn't about climbing toward heaven, it's about lying down and realizing heaven already came to you. That the ground you rest on is holy, because the same God who made the stars made that silence for you. The more I practiced this, the more it changed me. I stopped praying only to be heard and started praying to hear. I stopped chasing signs and started noticing presence. And I realized something I wish I'd known sooner, that rest is not retreat, it's alignment. It's when your body, your mind, and your spirit finally agree that God is enough. There are nights when I still can't find the words, when the world feels heavy, the headlines dark, and the noise of it all too much. Those are the nights I lie down, breathe slow, and whisper the only prayer that ever truly matters. Father, I trust you. And in that whisper, heaven answers. not with thunder, but with peace. So maybe that's what we need, a return to that ancient posture, a generation of believers who aren't afraid to stop striving, who know that stillness isn't weakness, it's worship. Because revival doesn't always look like fire falling. Sometimes it looks like a heart finally learning how to rest. If you ever find yourself too tired to kneel, too weary to speak, too broken to rise, lie down. Let your bed become your altar. Let your breath become your prayer. You don't need to reach for heaven. Heaven has already reached for you. And when you do, you'll discover what I did. That sometimes the most powerful prayer you'll ever pray is the one where you say nothing at all, just lying there, fully surrendered, fully seen, resting in the presence of the one who never sleeps, who never forgets, and who never stops holding you. Because in that stillness, God is closer than your next breath. And in that posture of trust, the soul finally learns what it means to be free.